Well, the stadium mess continues in Kansas City. Good morning. It is 6:04 on a Tuesday, and what an embarrassing scene it was last night in Kansas City where the Royals and Crown Center officials discussed plans for rezoning, parking arrangements, flow of traffic, ingress, egress for their new stadium that they have planned right there at Crown Center. And it was not an embarrassment for the Royals. It was not an embarrassment for the Crown Center officials. It was an embarrassment for many in the community who questioned the project itself. That's who it was an absolute embarrassment for. And on behalf of, you had people last night who literally could not keep their mouths shut. And they're people that I'm actually somewhat sympathetic towards. But they're there last night, and they're chanting, and they're hooting and hollering. And they had to actually end the meeting early after repeated disruptions were taking place from various groups and organizations who wanted to have their voices heard. Instead of just letting adults do what adults do, which is, hey, here's our proposal, here's our idea, here's what we think will make this beneficial to you and to all of Kansas City. Instead of that, what you got was a bunch of people screaming like school children, screaming like my 7, 5, and 2-year-old might when they don't get exactly what they want. So we all know that there have been some of these organizations like Stand Up KC who have been like, hey, we want to vote on the Royal Stadium. And I am sympathetic to their cause, okay? I am. I believe that the city and the Royals should put this to a vote. And by the way, I think it would pass. I do. I think it's a better proposal than the Royals project that was proposed up in the Crossroads area. I think losing the Chiefs is a reality for many Missourians and Kansas Cityans to be like, all right, well, we don't want to lose both these teams. Let's keep them here. And by the way, the horrific deal that Kansas offered the Chiefs makes the Royals deal look semi-reasonable. So put it to a vote. Put it to a vote of the people. So I'm sympathetic to those who want to vote. I am. But what I'm not sympathetic towards is adults treating other adults who are trying to have a conversation like absolute dog crap. That's what I'm against. And that's what happened last night because these Union Station officials, the Crown Center officials and the Royals officials, they didn't have to do this. We don't know if this thing is going to have to go to a vote. We don't know exactly what the next steps are on the project. Mayor Lucas insists he doesn't need a vote. I'm not convinced he's in any way right about that. I think we're in a unique holding pattern to see what the next legal step is going to be here. But can you just go to a meeting, ask your question, make your point, hold your rally outside of the venue? You'd get all the media publicity that you want. I'd talk about you. TV would show you on the nightly news. You'd get all the attention. But now you just look like petulant children. That's what these stand-up KC people and all these different groups and protesters who actually have a case to make that people on the left and the right oftentimes agree with, which is it the job of a city, is it the job of a county to fund a billionaire's playground? It is a very fair and reasonable conversation to have. The problem is they can't act fair and reasonable. So they hurt themselves and they hurt their own argument. Fox 4 had some of the reporting last night live on the scene, and here is what that sounded like. And we'll get to that here in just a moment on KCMO Talk Radio. Just let me know, Mark, when you're all lined up. It's all good. So I just want to play this for you because if you weren't there last night, they were in the big movie theater at Union Station, so it holds about 400 people. It wasn't totally full. It seemed like it came down at the last minute. I just, listen, I know I was off a couple of days last week, so I may have just missed that part of the story that they were planning this whole deal. but it seemed like it was somewhat thrown together at the last minute. Didn't get a ton of media publicity until yesterday. And by the time we got to yesterday, listen, Monday night in late July, people wrapping up summer vacations, people have their plans. They're not really like, let me drop everything and go to Union Station to watch the Royals and the Crown Center officials talk about their stadium plans. But I appreciate them doing it. Even if I don't necessarily agree with everything about the deal itself, I appreciate them doing it. And I actually think they did it in part for the right reasons. It's not clear to me they even had to do this. Because if the project's going through anyway, then they could just hide. They've been more transparent than anything involving the Kansas City Chiefs, who are about to soak generations of Kansas taxpayers for this, 10-day-a-year stadium in Wyandotte County. Here's what it sounded like last night at Union Station, this Royals Crown Center meeting where they were talking about the future of the ballpark.
Crown Center engagement meeting for the baseball stadium was cut short Monday evening after residents demanded this stadium be put back on the ballot for vote. Let us vote! Let us vote! Let us vote! Residents like Tomas Moran, who lives in the San Francisco Towers near the potential site, say this project would be beneficial to the community, but with the lack of transparency, it's hard to get behind.
Parking is essential. Chilled water, we get the chilled water through these services. So there's a lot of things that are not specified in the proposal. I know there'll be other phases, but I think they can be a little clearer than what they've been today.
On the other hand, union workers are advocating for this project because they say around 1,000 construction jobs will be brought to the area.
You're telling me then, or you're asking me, that the small businesses that are going to be surrounding here are not going to have a direct impact? They will, because those 1,000 to 1,300 construction workers are going to shop. They're going to buy something every single day. They're going to eat somewhere every single day.
The Royals
All
filed
right, that's good, Mark. Thank you. John, where do you want to take that?
Well, I find it interesting that people bitch and whine about no transparency when they walk out on a meeting.
Well, thank you.
I'm being the old man.
No.
Okay.
Is
that
you're
common
not.
sense, right? We're losing it?
It's common sense.
Okay.
It is absolute common sense. These people are whining about, we don't have a voice, we want to vote. First off, the Royals and the Crown Center folks have nothing to do with whether or not you get a vote. Go to City Hall, all right? Mayor Lucas is the one who right now appears to be blocking you from having a vote. Go to Mayor Lucas's office. Go down the 12th and Oak. That's where you got to go. Don't abuse the Royals and the Crown Center officials, okay? And then, on top of that, you got these people out there saying, let us vote, let us vote. They're there to talk about parking, ingress, egress. That's what they're there to do. Show you some updated plans. Show you some pretty pictures. Okay, I'm not saying that they don't have a point. I agree with them on putting it to a vote just to give the Royals, Crown Center, City Hall, basically all the ammunition that they need to say this project was approved by the people, we're going full speed ahead. Just like Sly James did with the airport. Once it went to a vote and the vote passed, if you were whining and complaining about the airport, you at least knew you were in the minority. You could complain and whine all day, but you really didn't have a leg to stand on once it went to the vote of the people, and the people overwhelmingly approved the airport project. I mean, you couldn't just sit there and say, everyone I know is against it. Oh, yeah? Well, there was a vote on it, and people voted for it. So you got to get out more and touch some grass. Like, that argument was put to bed very quickly. That's why the mayor should do the same thing right now with the stadium. But these people saying, let us vote at this meeting last night, they made their side, which I am sympathetic to, look really, really bad. And whoever's in charge, whoever organized this, the Stand Up KC folks, I mean, they should fire their leadership this morning is what they should do, John.
Well, the whole fact that it exists befuddles me, to be honest with you.
Well, that's a good point,
People
too.
are being led around by the people they oppose in general.
Well, that's a good point.
You know,
that is.
If they knew more about who was leading them, they might step out on their own.
Yeah, they fight the big money interests until they realize their leadership is, clearing big fat paychecks. Yes, easy in dark money from who knows where. Hello, George Soros. Welcome to the party, right? I mean, that's what this is all about. And unfortunately, this continues to make their side look worse. 913-4087-957 is our text line and our studio line as we started off on a Tuesday morning here on KCMO. The other big news from KCMO yesterday, a couple of council members made their opinions loud and clear on a proposed data center right in the heart of downtown. 20-story data center proposal right on Central Street. Which councilmen are speaking up about it, and is it the right move for Kansas City as these data centers are getting a ton of blowback? But by the way, don't tell that to President Trump. I'll explain next on KCMO.
Vince Colonnese here. Join me for your lunch hour from 11 to 2 on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
So these two council members in Kansas City have come out against the proposed data center on Central Street. So this is one that we've talked about on and off for the last few weeks. It's going to be potentially at 934 Central Street. That's the proposed site of a controversial 20-story data center tower in downtown Kansas City. It is facing pushback from a lot of groups. You'd have first floor retail, and then the upper floors would be dedicated to data infrastructure, closed loop water system, and on-site natural gas fuel cell power generation. There are issues as it relates to the fact that the building is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So that's part of the problem as well, the historic preservation angle. There is obviously political issues here. There's power and energy costs and what that means for people in the neighborhood. All the things that we've talked about as it relates to data centers. And Crispin Rea, who's going to be on the show this morning at 8:50, and Eric Bike Boy Bunch, I figured I wouldn't reach out to the Bike Boy since I don't think he likes the nickname that we've given him the last few years on this show. But they put out a joint statement, and here's in part what it reads. Kansas City has a rich and architectural history that's important to preserve for future generations. This proposal would replace rather than preserve that location for future generations. They go on to note here in their statement, our goal is to carry that stewardship forward while activating the building in a way that supports the surrounding community. They say here, city leaders and civic partners have worked hard to build a thriving downtown. This requires growth that adds more residents, employees, and visitors. This proposal does not contribute to downtown Kansas City's growth. That is the statement from Crispin Rea and from Eric Bunch. Now, I respect these guys for taking that stance. I think that's the right stance. I'm not opposed to a data center being somewhere in KCMO, but I fail to see why even the data center would want it to be in a historic building in the heart of downtown. I fail to see why that is a thing that is beneficial for anybody. Now, of course, you know, like I know, there's going to be and there will be asks for major tax breaks in any of these data centers. That's just how it goes, right? So I won't even get into that side of it. But just physically, what do you want your downtown to be? Ideally, you want population density. That's the goal of any downtown, okay? You want population density that grows not just residential, but also grows commercial, grows small business. That's what you want. That's how a downtown wins. Not by putting a hollowed-out data center that's 20 stories tall in an old historical building, having a couple of retail stores on the first floor and calling it a day. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I don't know where exactly this project's going to go, but you've got Crispin Rea and Eric Bunch, who are, the in-district council member and the at-large district council member, both coming out and saying, we're against this, and it doesn't contribute to downtown's growth. So we've had data centers be fought in Spring Hill successfully. We've seen independents not have a successful bid to fight their big data center that's going up. We've seen it fought in places like Liberty and KCMO. I mean, east, west, north, south, everywhere around Kansas City, the fight's been on with these data centers. And believe it or not, you can be pro-technology and understand the future of having data centers and how, yes, it's going to be part of our future for a very long time and we need them. Well, at the same time, being like, you know what? They need to be put in places that don't have major impacts on neighborhoods and communities.
It's interesting you bring up the independents one kind of got out in front of people before they knew what was happening, so they've had to kind of react to that. But it has been a bellwether, or what's the word I'm looking for, a harbinger for other communities who have been able to get out in front of it. So that's one thing with the Nebius project out in Independence.
Yes, they were kind of late to the party because they kind of slipped that one under the
slipped
rug.
it by in there. We've got the city council members over there being held accountable, I think, on that.
Yeah, they got a recall election coming up here in, I think it's about a month for one of their Independence council members. So they were just a little bit behind the curve there in Independence, which is why they couldn't stop it. But we've seen many other communities slow these things around Kansas City. What's really interesting is that President Trump may be actually not in touch with a large part of his base on the issue of data centers. So Trump has been a pro-data center guy for a long time. And I get why. Like, he's not wrong in saying that we are in this AI race against China. We've got to beat them in this data center race. And, you know, there's value in having these in America. He's not wrong about that. But as Trump can sometimes do, he takes things to the next level. And here's what he said in the last couple of days about these data centers that are very controversial in communities that overwhelmingly vote and love President Trump, like many around Kansas City. Here's the President of the United States a couple of days ago.
And even communities compared to other communities. You have some communities that really want this. This isn't all negative stuff. You have communities that really want the data centers. And frankly, those are the smart communities because it means tremendous numbers of jobs, very little actual disruption. And the ones that don't want it, you know, the happiest people in the world are foreign countries, number one, and number two, other communities within our country because they're begging for them to be there. And some of them are great communities, very, very forward-looking communities, very smart communities.
Do you know anyone begging for a data center in their community? I mean, we've had many more of these conversations with regular folks in Kansas and Missouri than, with all due respect, the President of the United States has ever had. And I don't know anybody who's begging to have a data center in their neighborhood, in their backyard. Not a single one. And by the way, I wouldn't want one either. I see the value in them. I understand why we need them. But to suggest that, you know, if you don't want this thing, well, you're just falling behind. Well, you know, I had this debate last week with Steve Moore on this show. The problem is for these guys in D.C. and New York, they're not going in their backyards. They're putting these things in middle America. They're putting them and they're wanting to put them here in Kansas City, in places like our backyard, where there's potentially agricultural issues for our farmers and our ranchers. There are issues as it relates to electric costs and water costs. There are a lot of problems around this that, with all due respect, I don't think the guys and gals in the Beltway are really in touch with. And I think that they are completely missing the mark as to where a bulk of their base is right now. And they've got to get back in touch with what's going on here. Because if not, you know, you had some protesters yesterday in Michigan where the president did a rally. And they were protesting him over this very issue of data centers. We'll get to it coming up. I'll play the audio and your calls, 913-408-7957.
from the nation's heartland. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
So we're keeping a close eye on the data center proposal downtown Central Street, old historic building. Yesterday, Crispin Rea and Councilman Eric Bunch came out against that data center proposal. And just the broader conversation here is fascinating because you're seeing these data centers want to go to many rural parts of America because they realize they can get cheaper land and cheaper electricity in Kansas and Missouri than they can in places like Virginia, New Jersey, New York, and California. So they're building these things at record pace. They're bringing in, yes, temporary jobs, but the pros versus the cons for the immediate communities that they reside in, at best, are still TBD. But Trump has been very much pro-data center, and he's saying we got to beat China in the AI race. Well, just to share the numbers with you, we've got about 5,000 data centers in this country. China has less than 500. So we're winning, okay? We're winning. The notion that we must go out there and we must make sure we do everything in our power to build every data center on every corner imaginable because if not, China's going to beat us. I mean, we've got a several-year head start. It doesn't mean I don't want to stay ahead of them. It doesn't mean that I do not want to see China, I certainly don't want to see them do well. But I also look at it and say to myself, we're in a pretty good spot. It's like with my kids, I sometimes give them a head start when we're doing races just to be that kind of a dad. But, man, this is like we've got a 90-meter head start on a 100-meter dash, John.
Absolutely, and we need to look into stuff. It's like it occurs to me now we have these limestone caves up here at the by the river. It's like, so we talk about we need to cool them. Well, the ground temperature stays pretty consistent. That's one of the features of the underground cave storage system up there. So I don't know why we couldn't necessarily go downwards with our building, if you will.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah.
It's by the river if you need water, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting because the amount of space these things are taking up is unbelievable.
Right.
There's a 5,000-acre AI data center campus that is called the Big Sky Digital Infrastructure Campus that's been proposed near Broadview, Montana. 5,000 acres is about 8 square miles, which is larger than Prairie Village. Yes, that's how big some of these data centers are going to be. Larger than the entire city of Prairie Village. That is unbelievable. And that's going to have legitimate impacts on some of these more rural communities, right? And for years, Republicans have championed what? Property rights, local control, protecting rural communities, skepticism on government subsidies. But now for data centers, we're kind of supposed to throw all that out the window because, well, China. And trust me, I have no interest in losing to China in anything. But you got to give me more. I don't think the sales pitch from whether it's Steve Moore on this show, the President of the United States, or others are really connecting with regular folks. And yesterday, the President was in Michigan doing a rally up there around, manufacturing and whatnot. But there were a bunch of people protesting the President, and these were, they look like his supporters.
Red
and
hats.
they were protesting the data center issue. So take a listen to what this sounded like. So that was yesterday in Michigan, and you can tell this issue is one that I think there's just a major disconnect right now between the powers that be in Washington, D.C., and many in the supposed conservative media space because they're kind of caught in that bubble, whether they admit it or not. They're caught in that bubble. They're in D.C., they're down in South Florida, they're going to the cocktail parties. They're hanging out with a lot of those White House people far more than they're hanging out with like us on the streets in Kansas City. Trust me. And there is a huge disconnect between these data centers, what they actually can do for communities, what the communities think about them, and what right now the political establishment thinks about them. 913-408-7957. And this one in Kansas City is just the latest example. When you've got, more liberal-leaning councilmen in Eric Bunch and Crispin Rea coming out and being like, this Central Street location, this 20-story data center proposal on Central Street is a bad idea, is not how we want to build up downtown. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, these guys are right. Steve's in KCK on KCMO. What's up, Steve?
Morning, Pete. Hey, one of my biggest concerns is the use of eminent domain, and there's people losing their land in red states like Alabama. They're losing their land to some of these data centers. And I don't care who the president is, Republican or Democrat. That's not cool. And this also is a big concern with me. And in my opinion, I think Ty Masterson could be what Trump wants. I'd like to hear some promises out of Ty Masterson that there's going to be no eminent domain being used to take Kansas land from Kansas property owners. He seems to be pretty proud of those Chiefs deal, and that's a good thing. I could see Ty Masterson being that guy. It's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I don't think the Trump endorsement of Masterson was that, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way to either guy. I don't think it was all that deeply thought out, in the sense that I just believe the right people were in charge of the campaign who had the right connections, and there was a case to be made that Ty's the best guy in a general to help Roger Marshall, win re-election. I think it was more about the X's and O's of politics than it was any policy per se, but I understand what you're saying there. I'll have Philip Sarnicki on at 9:05 this morning. Do you know who you're voting for yet, Steve?
Right now I'm with Sarnicki. Ty Masterson just kind of has that Mitt Romney greasy hair car dealer salesman vibe to me. He rubs me the wrong way.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate you, man. 913-408-7957. Let's go up to Gladstone. That's where Jay is on a Tuesday morning. Go ahead, Jay.
Good morning, Pete. I think Kansas City is a great place for data centers, but I don't think they're putting them in the right places. Something like the underground there that's under Worlds of Fun, or GeoCities, one of the caves, then you don't have to worry about, messing up any agriculture. As far as water goes, if they're just pumping it out of the Missouri River, and if it's an open loop, and, then the more purified water is getting put into our system, so our systems don't have to, purify as much water for our drinking, beautiful. Where I do see the failing is in power. If somebody like Google wants to build a data center, if they put up a lot of money to, say, expand Wolf Creek, or another nuclear power center, then it'd be a win-win-win. If they're not willing to put up anything to, build out their power infrastructure, then I don't think they should have a data center. The biggest thing is, our electricity prices. But if we can get more nuclear power for Kansas City, so all of our power is cheaper and secure for the next, several centuries, beautiful.
Well, listen, I'm with you there. I wouldn't hold your breath on that more nuclear power coming to Kansas City. But here's where I like your thought there, Jay, and I appreciate the call. Where I like your thoughts is when it relates to and how it relates to Kansas City in general, which is 320 square miles. We've talked about it. I mean, I've said this seriously. It'll never happen. The mayor laughed at me when I suggested it to him. But Kansas City's 320 square miles has about 500,000 people. It is the same geographical footprint, square mileage-wise, as New York City, where there are 8 million people. There are 16 times as many people in New York City as there are in Kansas City, but you still have to maintain the land, right? You got to clean the roads when it snows. You got to fill the potholes, and you just don't have the tax base oftentimes to do all of that. The data centers can bring you, if you don't give them the farm in tax incentives, can bring you revenue on land that you otherwise would not be making money off of. So, and there's a lot of open land, right? Whether you're talking up north where Jay was talking by Worlds of Fun, you can go down south. There's certainly land where you can, utilize it better, and there's a lot more money to be made on property taxes with a data center than there is with, say, farmland or just, open space. So I understand that. That could be good for Kansas City. But that gets back to the original part of the conversation. Putting it right there in downtown on Central Street in a historic building that's going to be 20 stories when you really want population density to build a robust downtown doesn't make any sense for anybody. Unless the city is just so desperate and trying to find every nickel that they can between the couch cushions that they feel they have to make this deal, it's a terrible location. There's really no way to spin that location as a good place for a data center. None whatsoever. But we will have this conversation with Crispin Rea. He's going to be on the show at 8:50 this morning, city councilman who came out against the data center there downtown. And Philip Sarnicki is going to be on the show. He has called for a moratorium on data centers in Kansas as part of his pitch to be the next governor. So we'll talk to him about that at 9:05 as well. Karen Crnkovich is going to be here at 7:05. She wants to be the Johnson County chairwoman, and she's got to get to the general first coming up next Tuesday. Next, the 6 at 6, top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour we'll get to on KCMO Talk Radio.
From Overland Park to Parkville, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, it is great to be here on a Tuesday morning on KCMO Talk Radio, and it's that time of the morning. Let's roll.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Well, top of the list is the tragedy involving Eric Bieniemy's family. Mia Bieniemy, the wife of the Chiefs' offensive coordinator, was shot by their son at their home in Virginia on Sunday night. We first shared this with you yesterday when the news broke at about 9 o'clock yesterday morning that she was shot at about 7:30 Sunday night and was hospitalized after that happened at their Ashburn, Virginia home. The Loudoun County Sheriff's Office said that they responded to the shooting on Sunday night. They found an adult woman suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. She was taken to a nearby hospital with serious injuries. And then we find out that authorities arrested their 27-year-old son, Elijah Bieniemy, in connection with the shooting. He has been charged with malicious wounding, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, and discharge of a firearm inside of a dwelling. He was booked into the Loudoun County Adult Detention Center and is being held without bond. The Chiefs have said in a statement they are aware of the incident, but did not provide any additional details. Bieniemy's been in St. Joe since training camp opened up over the weekend, and of course this is his first year back with the Chiefs after he was previously the offensive coordinator from 2018 to 2022. So that's what we have right now on this just bizarre story involving Eric Bieniemy and his family, and we'll keep tabs on it here on KCMO Talk Radio. And something tells me Keatsman may have some fireworks for us coming up at 10 o'clock with Uncanceled. Next up.
Number 2.
Well, let's go to the KCATA. They are getting ready to implement transit service changes. These were approved as part of the $2.6 billion city budget for the fiscal year 2026-2027. KCATA said the service adjustments were originally scheduled to begin in May, but were deferred through the available funding from the World Cup. So here's what's going to happen with the KCATA. They are going to be impacting certain routes that they deem as being redundant. There will be some workforce reductions as well with KCATA. And listen, this is all related to underperforming routes. They've reduced some of the frequency on certain routes. The Troost Max route has seen frequency have some adjustments there. So anything that you're looking at, whatever these routes are, there's going to be potential impacts. All right, so look it up. They start on September 6th. That's a Sunday. And that is when you're going to see some of these KCATA changes kick in the high gear. Next up.
Number 3.
Last night's the community meeting that was held at Union Station regarding the Royal Stadium included Royals officials and Crown Center officials ended abruptly after protesters said they wanted to vote on the status of the stadium. They interrupted officials from the Royals and the Crown Center folks, and they were chanting and cheering, "We want to vote! We want to vote!" And I thought they really embarrassed themselves last night in a big way. These folks were there to share information about rezoning, parking arrangements, traffic flow, and the protesters couldn't help themselves. Even those of us who are sympathetic to their cause and what they're trying to say as it relates to, the deal here in Kansas City, this is as bad as it gets from just a pure optics perspective, and I thought they really hurt their cause last night. Let's keep it rolling.
Number 4.
Well, tonight you've got the Royals opening up a 3-game set in Minnesota. They're taking on the Twins, and this is amazing. With the White Sox losing to the Yankees last night, as bad as the Royals have been, they're only 11 games out. They're in last place in the Central. They're only 11 games out going into Minnesota tonight, and they're only 9 games out of a wild card, fellas. Are we in any way optimistic?
Well, I like better baseball. I'm always happy. What have you done for me lately, right? So they've won 7 of 10 since the All-Star break, so I'll take it.
Okay. Mark, optimism, or are you kind of holding on tight to this?
You know, I'm always optimistic. If Bobby Witt Jr. comes back off the IL and can do some stuff to help him, I think they can go on a little winning streak here.
Oh, man. Oh, man. All right. Let's see how it plays out. We'll keep it rolling in the 6 at 6.
Number 5.
Singer Carly Simon has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and was recently treated for skin cancer. Singer shared this in a statement provided to the AP yesterday. 83 years old, she's been experiencing arthritis in one of her hips, both her knees, resulting in replacement surgeries for those 3 joints. But her mobility kept declining, and now it turns out that she has been diagnosed with Parkinson's. It's so weird because yesterday, Kate and I were listening to music, and You're So Vain came on, and I was like, wow, I haven't heard this song in, years, and it's a great song. And then I see this news break yesterday afternoon. So prayers up for Carly Simon. Last up in our 6 at 6.
Number 6.
A rattlesnake sighting in Johnson County. Oh, my good. There are a few things that would creep me out and disgust me and scare me more than seeing a rattlesnake in my backyard. Am I alone?
Digging up. No, if they start digging for detention centers around you, they may kick up a few timber rattlers out there.
Yeah. Put them underground with the data centers as far as I'm concerned. But the warm weather has brought the rattlesnake population to at least Johnson County. Fox 4 had this story yesterday. Just something to keep an eye on. I'm not trying to creep you out here on a Tuesday morning, but here we are. There's your 6 at 6. Karen Crnkovich wants to run Johnson County. She'll join us next. Can you believe it? 1 week to go until Election Day in Kansas and Missouri. My goodness, that went fast. And listen, it's kind of like studying for a final exam in college. It's amazing how many questions and direct messages I get, and it's not a bad thing. Like, I'm not knocking anyone. I realize everyone's got a busy life, right? You're going to work, you're raising kids, you're volunteering, you're involved with the church. You got a million things going on. And now you're either going to the polls right now because early voting is happening in both states, or you're getting ready for Tuesday and you vote on Election Day. Either way, the leadership in Johnson County is on the line, and Karen Crnkovich wants to be the next chairperson for Johnson County. Mike Kelly's the incumbent. Gene Senesac's also in the race. There are three people who want to take over and run Johnson County. Karen's now joining us here on KCMO Talk Radio. Karen, good morning. What has been the biggest thing, issue, topic that you have sensed on the trail as you head down the home stretch of this election?
Thank you, Pete, for having me this morning. Good morning to all of the listeners. The number one overwhelming issue is our skyrocketing property taxes. And my promise to those who support my candidacy and eventually me as chair is that in the time that I am your chairwoman, if I am unable to rein in the budget and offer property tax relief to all property tax people, or payers, not just a distinct few, that I won't run again. So I'm making my promise, and I am going to stand behind it.
So you would just do a 4-year term?
I would just do 4 years. If I can't fix it, then I would turn the reins over to somebody else who thinks they can. I will give it, and that hopefully tells voters how serious I am about fixing this. Because another thing I hear a lot is from people who are disenfranchised and who've given up and aren't going out and voting, which is a huge problem, is that they don't believe it can be done. They don't believe people who run for public office really mean what they say. So I'm going out on a line and I'm saying, not only do I mean what I say, I intend to deliver upon my promise.
Now, how does that work? You say if I can't deliver property tax relief in 4 years, I'm done. What if you just run into a county commission that basically says, well, great, let's just say this hypothetical scenario, you end up winning. And they're like, great, we can get rid of Karen here in 4 years by just not doing what she wants to do. Is that a concern?
It's not a concern because it's not in anyone's best interest. Look, I listen into these meetings on a weekly basis multiple times. I go back and listen multiple times to make sure I'm hearing things accurately. There is an appetite for change. The problem is that our current chair leads with his personal agendas and pet projects. He gives a blank check and a rubber stamp to every expenditure, and he's more busy and interested. He canceled 3 meetings this summer so that he could go, rub elbows with people during World Cup. I'm all for having World Cup fun, but we've got serious problems that need to be solved. It is absolutely insane that they took 3 weeks off in July. I am serious, and I'm going to get this job done. I'm not worried about obstacles because one thing I know is that every obstacle can be overcome with persistence and patience. And I am very patient, and I am very, very persistent.
It would seem to me, Karen, that one of the ways, well, there's 2 ways, 2 things to do, obviously. You got to figure out how to cut expenses and then also continue to grow revenue while not putting all that on the backs of the property taxes in this county. So what is the strategy to do that and achieve each of those things?
Well, the number one strategy is we have to be more efficient with how we deliver our government services. I am of the opinion, and I have gathered information from property tax experts, both here in Kansas and across the country. I believe we're holding too much in reserves by a significant amount, and so we need to cut back the reserves. I believe we have increased the staffing 18% in the past 5 years. Our population has only increased about 4 to 5%. So why are we increasing so many bodies, full-time employees? They're building the bureaucracy. We need to look at all of that, pare it back, when you have more people, sometimes more people just creates more confusion. We need to be lean and mean. We need to do our jobs effectively and efficiently. And I believe we can do that by cutting back staff and then looking at every single expenditure. Pennies add up to dollars, Pete. And when every department is like, oh, well, it's only six figures, it's only $5 million, it's only this, then everybody is spending at rates that are out of control, and it adds up. And so we need to have a new culture of fiscal responsibility. Every single penny, every single dollar needs to be looked at and considered in terms of, is this in the best interest of the taxpayers? And if it's not, then it is on the consideration for the chopping block.
Karen Crnkovich is running for Johnson County Chair on KCMO Talk Radio. What about, last hour we were talking about these data centers, which I know are controversial. I don't know if the impact exists for the Johnson County budget or if these are more municipal issues. Is there a county element to these data centers, and what do you think the future should be of those in Johnson County?
Well, I have gone on the record calling for a moratorium on data centers because I believe there are a lot of unanswered questions and valid concerns that citizens are raising surrounding these hyperscale data centers. We're not talking about, the four-room computer room that's in, an office building somewhere. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about millions and millions of square feet of just computer rooms. The county can play a role if a proposed data center, for example, is proposed in Johnson County unincorporated, but they can also provide a role in terms of convening municipal leaders to try to discuss this. Because right now, Edgerton, DeSoto are probably the two hottest, Spring Hill a little, hottest areas on this discussion. And I don't see any collaboration between those municipalities that do have land available. And I'm not anti-data center. I'm not anti-development. I'm pro-growth. I think growth is important. But I also think we need to address concerns and make sure that we're making wise choices for the long term in Johnson County and for our citizens.
Karen Crnkovich on KCMO Talk Radio. All right, Karen, so with 1 week to go, what are you sensing on the ground around Johnson County? As I know you've done a lot of the legwork, a lot of door knocking, a lot of meet and greets. What's maybe the issue that should be getting more attention that possibly has not been getting enough attention from media and elsewhere during this campaign?
Yeah, besides property tax, which I do believe is getting a lot of attention, the other thing that I think is very concerning is the lack of transparency that we have experienced under Mike Kelly's reign as county chair. He has changed rules, for example, so that he doesn't have to say why he's recusing himself. He's recused himself far more, at a far higher rate than any other sitting chair or any other sitting commissioner. And he doesn't say why. I find this troublesome. And the fact that he changed the rules when he came into office so that they wouldn't have to say why they're recusing themselves, I find very suspect. In addition, he's done things like had, for the first 2 years that he was commission chair, the public comments were not live streamed. So that citizens who do take the time to go back and listen to the meetings had no idea what was being said from our own citizens. What do we have to hide from? I believe in radical transparency. I believe that everyone should know what's going on, understand why decisions are being made. And right now we have a lot of backroom, behind closed doors meetings, and it's very, very troublesome and not in the best interest of our citizens.
Karen, best of luck over the next week. We always appreciate you being here on KCMO Talk Radio, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Go vote.
All right, Karen Crnkovich on KCMO. Early voting is underway. It's longer in Kansas than it is in Missouri. I think in Kansas it's, 2.5, almost 3 weeks. In Missouri, I believe it's a couple of weeks. So, that's already happening now. I'm sure many of you have voted. If you are diehard, or maybe not. Maybe the casuals go out and vote more in the early voting period than the diehards. I don't know. I'll be voting on Election Day in this cycle because I don't think it's available on Monday. So I'll just be going on Tuesday to the polls and voting in the primary for governor. And by the way, Philip Sarnicki is going to be on the show at 9 o'clock today. voting in the Johnson County chairperson race. And then, of course, you've got the big amendment on the ballot as it relates to voting for Supreme Court justices in the state of Kansas, which I will get to here coming up on the show at the bottom of the hour. Coming up, is there some beef within this radio station? Two guys on opposite sides on the biggest topic of the day. We'll break it down next.
From Smithville to Shawnee Mission, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, obviously, the sports world in Kansas City was shocked yesterday with this story that Eric Bieniemy's son is allegedly the one who shot his own mother, Mia, as Eric Bieniemy, the Chiefs' offensive coordinator, was here in St. Joe to start training camp with the Chiefs. Of course, he's back after a 4-year hiatus to be the offensive coordinator. And already, listen, you've got people lining up. What does this mean for the Chiefs' season? What does it mean for the offense? What does Mahomes think? How are the Chiefs going to handle this? How long is EB going to be gone? And I'll get to my thoughts here in a second, but listen, I have a feeling that Uncanceled today, coming up at 10 with Kevin Kietzman, is going to be absolutely wild. And I mean that in a complimentary way, because Kevin just gives you stuff that other people either aren't thinking about or just simply won't say. You will never have to wonder where Kevin's at on almost any issue. And that's what makes him one of the best to ever do it. And I don't just mean in Kansas City. I mean in all of sports radio. And certainly now he's made this transition to more, news talk radio. But listen, sports is obviously part of what we do on a regular basis when it's leading the news. So Kevin, he got a lot of flack for some of his takes yesterday on social media. He wrote here, does the offensive coordinator, meaning Eric Bieniemy, after what happened yesterday, still have the endorsement of Patrick Mahomes? We know Andy doesn't care. Does QB1 still want to do all of this? Keats writes, Eric Bieniemy needs to go. Stat. He didn't do it, meaning obviously shoot his wife, but a life of violence and crime has to end with consequences. I'm praying for the mom, but this wasn't out of nowhere. That was from Kietzman yesterday on social media. And listen, Bieniemy does have, and I know Kevin's going to lay it all out at 10 o'clock, does have a history. He's got domestic violence. He's got DUIs in his background. So he does have some stuff in his background. And it's believed to be one of the reasons that he's never been a head coach in the NFL. Well, then I see this from our own and his producer, Mark Van Sickle. Mark writing here this morning on X. I endorse keeping Eric Bieniemy as Chiefs OC and taking as much time as he needs to be with his wife at this time. I endorse Andy Reid's handling of the situation. I endorse Mahomes looking like he's in shape at the start of training camp. I will not be taking questions at this time. Well, Mark, you will be taking questions from me.
Okay.
I just want to know, I need to know whether or not I need to hire security in the studio today when Kietzman rolls in at about 9 or 9:15. Are you guys going to be able to work together during the 10 o'clock show?
Oh, it's all good. I know Kietzman has his hot takes from time to time, and last year it was the Mahomes on the Taco Bell diet. We had off-air conversations about that. So it's fine. I know Kevin's going to do his thing, and I'll let him cook. I'll not open my mic until I'm requested to, so it'll be all good.
Okay. All right, you got to let him cook. So I could hire security for the day. I could just have John Anthony play bouncer.
I'll go down the hall and get Doug from Fox. We'll get Medlock in on it.
Well,
He's
yeah, Doug he could be a good bouncer, although he wanted to fight me at one point too, so I don't know about that.
Okay.
But we got to get that all straightened out first. But anyway, okay. All right. We could grab Mike O'Reilly from 94.9 KCMO, although Mike's able to talk anybody off the ledge. He's a very smooth talker.
That's true.
So everybody likes Mike O'Reilly. So he might be the guy to just calm things down here at KCMO Talk Radio if it gets ugly when all of us are together later today. All right. Well, I just want to make sure you're okay, Mark, and everything's going to be all right when Keats rolls in at about 9 o'clock this morning.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be all good. I'm not reaching as far as he is on some of this stuff. I don't think that Eric Bieniemy needs to be fired over this stuff, but we'll see what Kietzman has to say.
Listen, I will say this much, and there are plenty of things that Kevin and I disagree on, right? But he almost always, because I know he disagrees with me, I disagree with him, but that's what makes this amazing. Everyone thinks like this format is just, 13 hours a day, 6A to 7P of every host banging the same drum and saying the same thing. And that's just not true at all in this format. But he always is typically able to make his case in a compelling, certainly compelling, absolutely entertaining, And he's got his facts to support his beliefs. And I assume that's what he's going to do coming up at 10. Now, what I would say about this whole case is the following. There are plenty of people I know in my life, personally and professionally, whose children have been complete knuckleheads, sometimes criminals. And you look at the siblings and you say, how did these kids grow up in the same family? So I am never one to jump on the, well, boy, mom and dad really screwed this up and should have seen this coming. I'm not saying that's not the case with Bieniemy. I don't really have enough to know about the inner workings of their family to have any opinion on that, to be honest. I just know that there are people in my life where one kid's a total screw-up, sometimes ends up, spending time in jail, maybe worse. And the other kids are choir boys or girls. And you're like, how do these kids get raised by the same parents? How are they biologically from the same two people? So that's always where I'm at on those issues. And so far, until I get more evidence, that's where I'm at right now in this Bieniemy case. But I will say the last thing the Chiefs need right now is another off-field headache when they're trying to hit the reset button on the disaster that was 2025. John, final word here?
Yeah, sometimes we have the crop duster plane mentality that they go real low to spray the crops, and then all of a sudden they shoot up for the 30,000-foot view. I was thinking of the low view here, but I'm sure Kevin's going to present that 30,000-foot view coming up on Uncanceled.
Yep, 10 o'clock. Don't miss it on KCMO Talk Radio. It is going to be outstanding. There's no doubt about it. And I can feel it. You get those days when you just feel it. I can feel it. And Kevin's going to lay it out coming up at 10. Coming up next, I will lay out for you why I'm even more passionate about something that one side of our state line will be voting on. It's a no-brainer, and we'll get to it next.
Coming up at 10 o'clock, it's Uncanceled on KCMO Talk Radio, right after Pete Mundo and Mundo in the Morning.
All right. I'm going to get to this issue on the Kansas side of the state line that a lot of you have emailed, texted, tweeted, Facebooked me about, and that is whether or not Kansas should be electing Supreme Court justices. But first, we were just talking about Eric Bieniemy, what's coming up with Uncanceled at 10 o'clock. Keatsman wants Bieniemy out as the Chiefs OC after his son allegedly shot their mother yesterday in Virginia. Alfonso's in Blue Springs. I wasn't going to take the call, Alfonso, because I want you to call Keatsman, but I was told by our producer extraordinaire, John Anthony, that you are going to be in a meeting later during Uncanceled, so I'm giving you the floor right now. Go.
I'm going to try to get into the bathroom for this at 10 o'clock. That is the worst sports take ever. I come from a family where I'm like oil and water, and I got a bad sibling, and you'd never know it. But we didn't fire Andy Reid when his son killed somebody or did whatever with the drunk driving. So why would we fire Eric Bieniemy for something that his kids did? That's the worst take ever.
You know, listen, I'll let Kevin defend it at 10 o'clock. I think his take will be, what does it all mean for the culture of the Chiefs? And just to be clear, Andy Reid's kid didn't kill that young girl, but obviously her life was changed forever. We know what happened there a few years ago coming out of that I guess, party they had at Arrowhead Stadium. But listen, I don't agree either, just because, to your point, I know people in my personal life whose kids have been knuckleheads, thugs, criminals. The siblings are totally normal, and you can't point to the parenting or the upbringing for why some kids just don't turn out the right way. So, that's been my personal experience, but what I want you to do is go to the bathroom at 10 o'clock and make sure you are streaming Uncanceled on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Deal?
I will definitely try to call back.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go, Alfonso. Appreciate you, man. I only, John and Mark are like, do you want to squeeze in a call here before the Supreme Court justice deal? I said, if the guy can't get to Kevin at 10, I'll give him a chance. But I also wanted to use it to tell him he better be on that KCMO Talk Radio app coming up at 10 for Uncanceled. That's my message to Alfonso. All right? It's going to be a good show. It always is. Coming up on Tuesday, Kansans are going to vote, maybe you already have, or you still will with early voting underway, on electing your Supreme Court justices. And a couple of weeks ago I talked about this. I broke it out on the podcast, and many of you shared it and listened to it there. And I was in favor of it, and I said I would vote yes on this, but I also had a lot of concerns. Because a part of me felt like this was largely Republicans excusing away their losses. Right now, how it works in the state of Kansas is you basically have the governor get a bunch of options of who the next Supreme Court justice in Kansas might be, and the governor gets to pick from a list of finalists. And those finalists are provided by a group of people that really are attorneys and represent the attorney community. So you don't really get oftentimes someone who might look out for, let's say, the interests of rural Kansans or the interests of really conservative Kansans, by and large. And we know that there are, millions of those in a 3 million person state. So this is a way to basically put the Supreme Court justices on a ballot, take it away from the attorney lobby, and make it in some ways less political. Now, you're probably getting mailers and you're seeing social media ads saying billionaires are trying to buy Supreme Court justices in Kansas. Well, let's be honest. Under the current system, you can make a strong case that is already happening. You can. But my other issue here was we can't get people to vote in school board elections. Now we're going to get people fired up to elect Supreme Court justices? Please. And somehow, maybe those justices who may more align with conservative values and conservative principles are going to just flood in to the state Supreme Court. I have a hard time believing that. But I've changed my tune on this. And not that I didn't already encourage people to vote yes. I'm voting yes I just had issues with the whole process and people thinking this would create a panacea for the Supreme Court in Kansas. I don't think that's going to happen. But when I was talking to some folks over the last 24 hours or so, one thing that came up on this deal that I hadn't really thought about was the fact that Kansas has really tried to drive tort reform in the region much more than Missouri. I mean, Missouri is a free-for-all. We talked to Scott Fawn about this yesterday, or I guess that was last week at this point. Even the conservatives seem to be owned by the trial attorneys, okay? I mean, they have these guys by the short hairs. They do. They don't want any caps. They want to make all the money they can make. They want to sue everybody into oblivion. And I think it's actually hurting the growth of Missouri much more than, say, not having a state income tax, which is going to be on the ballot. But I'll save that for another conversation. Kansas has tried to enact caps on things like tort reform and limiting some of the payouts with these personal injury clowns. And listen, there's good ones, there are good cases, but let's be honest. That entire industry is saturated with people just looking to make a buck. Just be honest. I know personal injury attorneys. One of my best friends is a personal injury attorney. He also is sometimes the butt of our jokes when the boys get together or we're talking in the group chat, because even he knows, as many cases as there are that are legitimate, there are a lot of people that ruin that industry for everybody else. It's a fact. And we know those people in our lives who are just trying to trip and fall and sue everybody into oblivion. There was a lady I was reading about last week who is now suing McDonald's because she says the French fries burned her mouth. She also has sued Walmart and Dunkin' Donuts in the last 12 months. So what do you think of that person? What do you think of those people? Okay? We all know those people. But in Kansas, this Supreme Court has, in many ways, tried to stall the legislature from enacting more tort reform and putting more caps on some of these personal injury payouts. And that's why the Kansas Chamber of Commerce is lobbying on behalf of voting yes on the Supreme Court justices. Because I was trying to figure out why the chamber would be so involved in this and why they would have such a strong opinion on this. And their attitude is, hey, we want more tort reform because it helps our businesses if we're not consistently getting sued left and right. Now, there are times when, let's be honest, these companies and industries and businesses deserve to be sued. But you got to be able to put caps on this appropriately in a way where people are not abusing the system. And that's what you have, unfortunately, going on the Missouri side of the state line. So I still believe that there's a major uphill battle because what's going to happen now is even if Kansas decides to elect its Supreme Court justices, you're going to have a ton of money come in on whatever would maintain the status quo. And by that, I mean left-leaning judges who will defend spending enormous sums of money on the schools, right? I mean, think about how the Supreme Court has impacted the budget in the state of Kansas as it relates to public education, the abortion issue, all these different things that have come up over the last several years and have really changed the layout of the state of Kansas over the last decade or so with key issues, budget issues, tort reform issues as it relates to abortion. There will be a ton of money that floods in on electing Supreme Court justices. So it's not going to be easy for conservatives to get their people on the Supreme Court. But it does at least set up a better system. And by the way, if these Supreme Court justices, and there's a lot of states that do this, Kansas would not be alone. I was looking it up. There are 38 states that use popular votes or retention choices for their state Supreme Court justices. And right now, Kansas just has the retention deal. But if you've got to elect these people, and you'll stagger basically how they're set up, and you'll stagger, when certain people are up for election and when other people are up for election, it at least gives the people a voice. Now, whether or not people get motivated by this is still TBD. But I was already a yes vote on it, but now I'm a bigger yes vote on it coming up on Tuesday. And we'll have a representative from the chamber on the show tomorrow to talk about it here on KCMO Talk Radio. 913-4087-957, our text line, our studio line here on KCMO. Top of the hour, Bishop Davidson. What a name. I hadn't heard about this guy until a couple of days ago. But that's a heck of a name. Bishop Davidson. I feel like he should be a war general. Bishop Davidson is a member of the Missouri legislature, and he was the sponsor of the bill to eliminate the income tax in the state of Missouri. He'll join us and explain that coming up at 8 o'clock on KCMO. And Tirade Tuesday is happening next hour. All right, so get those tirades all lined up. Coming up next, the strategy for November has become very clear. It's part of what I told you was going to happen yesterday, and I'll share with you where I saw this on TV last night next, right here on KCMO.
Vince Colonnese here, and I'm coming up at 11 after Kevin Keatsman on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
So last night, I'm watching Fox News, and I normally don't watch Fox News at that time of night, but I am visiting some family. My schedule's just a little different, little thrown off, so I'm not in my usual routine, right, where I'm at home, get the kids down, kind of get researching. Just there's moving parts, just kind of how it is right now. Nothing good or bad, just different. And I stumble upon Sean Hannity. And listen, I respect Sean and what he has built, but I don't watch Hannity. There is nothing new there. There is nothing different outside of banging and hitting the company line over and over and over again. And I know it's been very good to him, and it's obviously made him a great success, but there's not a lot of depth. There's not a lot of new. There's not a lot of difference. And it's kind of the same thing every day. But I'm watching it last night. It was on. And within the first 5 to 10 minutes, I was watching the Republican midterm strategy play out in a way that I told you and predicted that it would yesterday, with yesterday being, 100 days until the midterm elections. And Hannity opens up his show, and he's going off about how the Democrats have all these socialists who are now winning primaries, and there's 38 of them potentially that could be in Congress, and this is the biggest midterm of our lives. And they're not actually socialists, they're communists. And I'm like, dude, there's got to be something more than this. There has to be. I know that fear is what you use to try to get people off the couch, to try to get them to vote. But it's much easier to do that when you're the party that's not in power. It is so much easier for right now Democrats to be like, Trump's a dictator, get to the polls in November, because they have no power, than it is for Trump or Sean Hannity to be like, get to the polls so the commies don't take over. It's just a much more difficult pitch. But within 5 minutes, because here's the thing, I know for a fact that Sean Hannity talks to the President of the United States multiple times a day. And I've heard it from multiple people. So my point is, if you want to know what the party line is, or if you want to see what the party strategy is, I'm kind of taking you behind the scenes a little bit here, but you will get it every day from Sean Hannity. Like, people think that I get this blueprint of, here's what the Republican Party is going to say today. No. And honestly, there are people from the RNC, the Republican National Committee, who always want to, come on this show. And I'm like, why? I mean, if Trump wants to come on, of course. I mean, sign me up for that. If somebody from the administration wants to come on, I'm all ears. Some no-name spokesperson from the RNC is going to come on and just give you the company line. Who's interested in that? Like, who wants that content? I'd rather hear from you, and I mean that as a compliment as the caller here in Kansas City. I'd rather have the conversation with you and go back and forth and get your thoughts than someone who's paid by a political party to come on the show and say the most predictable stuff of all time. I have zero interest in that. But the closest thing that you'll get is how Hannity's program is set up and laid out. And within 5 minutes last night, you were seeing, with 100 days to go, the midterm strategy playing out in real time. And it was fascinating because we did a lot on this yesterday, since I was a couple of days off last week and kind of got a chance to take a step back and realize that the Republican Party feels like it's lost its swagger. And that's the swagger that it had coming out of 24. Win the House, win the Senate, win the White House, sweep all the swing states. Got some mojo in 24 into 25, and it feels like now they're trying to find their footing once again. They're trying to figure out what that line is going to be, or what that sales pitch is going to be to the American people. And I'm not saying they shouldn't go out there and say, hey, this Democratic Party has changed a lot. This is not Bill Clinton. Heck, this is not even Barack Obama. This is a completely different party with a very far left base in it that continues to gain power. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that, but there's just got to be more to it than that, because that in and of itself is not enough to win coming up in November. And if they think it is, they are kidding themselves. 913-408-7957 on the text line. Pete, Sean Hannity was at his best when he had Alan Colmes. I agree. I completely agree. I think it kept him sharp. I think it kept him on his toes. And I think that we all need that at times. Like, talk radio has that because of you, the caller. You can call up and say, I don't even know what. I don't know where you're going to go. That's what allows this format to really stay fresh and not become repetitive. That's you and the guests that obviously we try to book for the show as well. But, you know, if you're a one-man band on TV and you're not going to find the right guest, like O'Reilly during the heyday of the O'Reilly Factor, boy, he had some blow-ups with his guests, and it was amazing television. He sought that. He seeked that out. He wanted that. Now, it's harder to book those guests today, but it was good for the show, and it was good for the host of the show as well. That's just indisputable. So that is a good point on the text line, 913-408-7957. That's how you join us here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We're streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app as always. And yes, as many of you are noting on the text line, the Iran war has got to come to an end here. Whatever the strategy is, they've got to wrap it up before November, because if not, I don't see the pathway to holding the House. Senate, yes, I think they can do it. It's going to be very tough to hold the House. Coming up, should Missouri eliminate the state income tax? Bishop Davidson sponsored the bill in Missouri. He'll give us some of the details, and I have some questions for him next. So, Missouri, you will be voting on whether or not to eliminate the income tax in the state. Bishop Davidson is here. He's a Missouri legislator. He sponsored the bill on the House side, so he knows it inside and out. He joins us here in Kansas City on KCMO Talk Radio. Bishop, good morning. Thank you for being on the show. The first question I have for you here, it actually comes from our text line, and I think it's a good question because there's a lot of people like this. How would eliminating the income tax in Missouri help somebody living in Missouri but working in Kansas?
It would help someone living in Missouri but working in Kansas in a few different ways. One is general economic activity. And I think that's always the missing part when we talk about Amendment 5, when we talk about tax policy in general. I think most people think about revenue generation. Does it generate X revenue, more revenue, less revenue? What's it do? But the bigger question is, what does it do to our underlying economic activity? I always say that your revenues at the state level are tied less to the rate of taxes and more tied to the underlying economic activity. The same can be said for a household or a family or an individual's budget, that it's not the rate of tax that's going to make them richer or poorer so much as the tax's effect on that underlying economic activity. And so the greatest benefit, I'd say, to that person is that they would then get to benefit from a growing economic environment in the state of Missouri. And as the economy grows, there's two things that happen, right? As the economy grows, you get more job offerings, more job availability. More jobs actually drives drives wages up. And you also get more goods and services. The more goods and services you get, competition tells us that drives prices down. And so it kind of hits affordability on both sides of it from a wage and price standpoint.
For people who are worried, Kansas City has pockets where the sales tax rate is already 10 to 11% in some cases. For people who are worried about the idea of, okay, we eliminate the income tax over time, we replace it with a sales tax. Are we going to be looking at sales tax rates of 15+% on basic goods and services in, say, Kansas City? How concerned should people in our area be about that?
Yeah, locally it can only go down. And so here's the other big missing piece. It's not really an increased rate that you replace this with. It's a broadened base. Right now, 70% of the economy is frozen out of the sales tax. And that's only going to go up as we move from being a goods-based economy to a service-based economy, right? And new things are created, like AI services. But here's the thing. Just by broadening the sales tax base, by applying it instead of to 30% of things, applying it to 60% of things, you can eliminate the income tax, and depending on the political subdivision, you probably see an overall sales tax decrease. And that's because in the constitutional amendment itself, it requires local subdivisions to roll back their rates and not gain any new revenue. At a state level, people have said, oh, you're going to raise 17% or this percent or that percent. Right now, our state is 4.225%. If you do the math and you want to eliminate income taxes by 2032, and you want to do so without gaining a dollar for the state or losing a dollar for the state, and you do it with as broad of a sales tax base or a broadened sales tax base, you're looking at 4.97%, so 0.75% more. That then triggers local rollbacks as well. And that's why I think there's a very real possibility you're either paying a similar sales tax rate and in some instances a lower sales tax rate.
Okay, so if the goal then is over time to really hope that this policy of eliminating the income tax would just grow the population, grow the workforce, and that obviously then ends up just growing the revenue for the state of Missouri. What is the long-term plan for that? Because we saw Kansas try it over 10 years ago now, and we know that unfortunately crashed and burned. So for those of us who are obviously in this area, know that experiment on the Kansas side, and know, unfortunately, how it did not work, why is this different in Missouri?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'd say it's not really a hope. It's a data-driven conclusion. But Kansas is informative, right? It's helpful. This is totally different than Kansas. Kansas, frankly, there's a whole book on it. It was really a disaster for a lot of reasons that aren't even very publicly out there. But the real big problem with Kansas is that they just had scheduled reductions, nothing else. It was just boom, boom, boom. At this year, you're going to go down to this percent. At this year, you're going to go down to this percent, period. And there is no other kind of mechanisms to it. No revenue triggers, which is what we have in our constitutional amendment. No replacement revenue, which is what we have in our constitutional amendment. If we don't have growth, we don't actually have reductions. Kansas just did automatic reductions regardless of what was happening in the underlying Kansas economy, regardless of what was happening in the underlying budget environment. And so ours is based on revenue growth. And if revenue growth doesn't come, there's a pause in what those reductions would look like.
Okay, so if it's really just not happening like maybe you're hoping it would happen, they would not be then reducing the income tax rate. What would the goal be to eliminate it by what year? If you had, your magic wand, how would that look?
Yeah, I think it's 2032 to 2036. I'd probably lean more towards 2033, 2034.
Got it. Okay. Bishop Davidson is here, Missouri lawmaker, sponsor of the bill to eliminate the income tax in the state of Missouri. Missourians will be voting on that coming up here in just a few days. So with that being the case, what about people who say, hey, this Kansas City deal is kind of unique. What if now a bunch of people end up moving to Missouri, but they do most of their shopping in Kansas if the sales tax rate is lower, because obviously you know how this state line works. It really just is a made-up boundary that doesn't mean anything. So is that at all a concern in terms of how this specific region would operate without an income tax?
Yeah, Kansas City has to be important to Missouri, period, right? It doesn't matter where you live in Missouri, Kansas City is important to Missouri. And so that is at the forefront of our thinking. And I told you that rate, honestly, 4.97. I think you add a few more exemptions, you go up into the 5s, 5 to 6 range kind of thing. Kansas is 6.5%. So, we have some latitude, quite frankly. We have some wiggle room there, but I think it's very easy to stay under what Kansas charges when it comes to sales taxes. And then because of those local rollbacks, I think it's very realistic to even go lower than where we are today. In total.
No. Okay. No concerns that this would have a negative impact on property taxes, because I know, listen, Texas doesn't have the state income tax, but if there's a big complaint down there in Texas and Florida to a lesser extent, their property taxes are really high. So it makes people wonder, well, are they actually better off? What is your take on what this would mean potentially for property taxes?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So at a state level, we don't levy property taxes, and we're constitutionally not allowed to levy property taxes. And this amendment doesn't change that. Section 8 of Article 10 already prohibits it, and we want to keep that prohibition in place. When it comes to where property taxes are levied locally, because this keeps the locals revenue neutral, there's nothing that needs to happen to property taxes in terms of increasing them. And in fact, and I'm going back to those local rollbacks, it depends on the political subdivision, and we have a lot of those in Missouri, but they'll be rolling back their sales tax rates or their property tax rates, their real or personal property, or in the case of Kansas City and St. Louis, their earnings tax rates as well, as they receive more revenue from an expanded base sales tax. So there is no concern whatsoever about property taxes. In fact, the mechanisms in Amendment 5 are the first time that we created a path to actually reducing property taxes. Usually the legislative conversation is around capping assessments or freezing them or whatever it might be. This is the first time that I've seen a piece of legislation that sets out a path to reduce property taxes.
Okay. All right, Bishop Davidson, thank you for your time. I know it's something that you work really hard on, and you're hoping that the folks vote on Tuesday to eliminate or phase out, is probably the best way to put it, the income tax in the state of Missouri. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. Bishop Davidson on KCMO. He was the sponsor of the bill on the House side to eliminate the income tax in Missouri. Listen, I would vote for it, but if I was betting on it right now, I would bet that the no comes out on top. Just if I was betting on it. I really haven't seen and heard a huge push I haven't heard a lot of ads. I haven't seen a lot of ads around, why Missouri needs to eliminate the income tax. I know the legislature and Governor Kehoe basically said, hey, we're going to let the people decide on whether or not they want to get rid of their income tax. They'll say that on one hand. Then they'll say this is crucial to the future of the state. But I'm not seeing a lot of people running around the state advocating for it. And maybe I'm just missing it. But I'm not getting the sense that that's happening. And the only people I really see lobbying for it are people being paid to do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But those are the big pushers of the elimination of the income tax in the state of Missouri. So it's very interesting. Coming up, Tirade Tuesday, bottom of the hour. Get your tirades all lined up, whatever rant you want to get off your chest. 8:30 on a Tuesday morning is the time to do it. Get those tirades ready. Coming up next, Mayor Lucas has made an endorsement. It's a big one, and it's not even in his own state. We've got it for you next on KCMO. All right, as you are sitting there and you're thinking about maybe the fall, and yes, when it comes to the kids going back to school, that's happening in like 2 weeks. So I know it's July, but the fall's going to be here before we know it. And you're thinking about redoing your siding, your windows. You need to make the call now. Because if you want that work done, there's a several-week lead time on those projects. And CMP Construction here in Kansas City is not just going to do things like custom home and kitchen remodeling, basement remodeling, bathroom remodeling. They do a lot of that. But they also do things outside the home, like siding and windows. They install Andersen windows, and they are giving free estimates to KCMO Talk Radio listeners. They don't typically do that, to be honest, but they're doing it for this audience because they believe in the audience. They are one of you. They're listeners of the radio station. They have been forever, and they're a locally owned and locally operated business here in Kansas City run by Chris and Teresa, and they built CMP Construction over 25 years, and they did it by just building that trust one room at a time. So whether it's inside the house or outside the home, see their work at cmpremodel.com. That's cmpremodel.com. You can see all the incredible photos right there on the website, and then you can give them a call right there on the website at cmpremodel.com. Tell them we sent you right here on KCMO.
From Lenexa to Lee Summit, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
All right, Mayor Lucas has just come out with an endorsement 1 week to go until the primaries in Kansas and Missouri. And 2 days after Mayor Q decides he's going to give his endorsement of voting no in Kansas on Supreme Court justices, he has now dove in headfirst to the Kansas U.S. Senate race, where he posted a video moments ago on Facebook alongside Pastor Adam Hamilton with this endorsement. Let's roll it.
Proud to be in Kansas today with Adam Hamilton, a good friend and a person who stands up for our entire region, all of us in the Midwest. And as a kid who used to live in Hutchinson, Kansas, cares a lot about our entire region. Proud to endorse Adam Hamilton for the United States Senate.
Mayor, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I've appreciated you for a long time, your friendship, your encouragement. I appreciate your leadership. You're an awesome leader, and I'm really proud to have your endorsement today. Thank you.
Well, vote for Adam Hamilton and eat some good barbecue here in KC.
Absolutely.
Wow. That doesn't make sense for anybody. Anybody. Unless Adam Hamilton thinks that he's in a very tight primary race ahead of next Tuesday, wrapping himself around Quinton Lucas as a guy who's trying to win statewide in Kansas is honestly one of the more head-scratching, just pure political decisions you can make. How are you possibly going to shift to, in a couple of weeks, I'm nothing but a moderate when I'm, slapping the back of Mayor Lucas? And listen, we have Mayor Lucas on the show every Thursday. And yes, he will say I'm a moderate. And maybe compared to Mamdani in New York City, he is. And I respect the mayor. He comes on this show every single week. I wouldn't say, I've been talking to the guy every week for 6.5 years now. I've known him for almost 10. I don't think he's a moderate. I think he's a solid Democrat. He's a solid liberal. He's not a democratic socialist. No, he's not in that lane at all. But I wouldn't say he's just a hair left of center either. He's just solidly in the middle of where the Democratic Party is today, and that is solidly liberal. But if you're Adam Hamilton and you're serious about winning statewide in Kansas, and you think that you can be the first Democrat to win a U.S. Senate seat in the state in 100 years, why would you want the endorsement publicly of Mayor Lucas? Unless you don't think you can get through the primary coming up next Tuesday, which I don't see how he doesn't. Honestly, I think he's going to cakewalk through the primary. Why do this? Now, I kind of get it for Mayor Lucas. He wants to play kingmaker in not just Kansas City, but the region. I think that he knows he's going to have to take a break from running for office here when he's done coming up next year. He'll be done as mayor almost 1 year to the day. He'll be done as mayor. I think it's August 1st or something like that. Quinton Lucas will officially be out as the mayor of Kansas City. I think he likes the idea of playing kingmaker, at least for a period of time, to keep himself top of mind around Kansas City. So that's going to be his role. And listen, I understand why he would do that. And I understand the short-term and the long-term political play for the mayor of Kansas City. But for Adam Hamilton, I don't see how he benefits at all. Because if he gets through the primary, you know what I do if I'm Roger Marshall? I play that. Like, I don't even have to do anything. I just play that on loop. And I think you win fairly easily. That was just cringe. And the strategy to me doesn't make any sense. And the video's on Facebook right now, on the Mayor Lucas Facebook page. It's not on X. I don't know if there's a reason for that, or the team just hasn't gotten around to posting it yet on X. But that was beyond bizarre to me. I don't get that for the life of me. I really don't. But, I guess that's why someone makes the big bucks on the campaign side, to figure out why that's a good idea for anybody. But here we are. Tirade Tuesday's coming up right around the corner. on KCMO. So last night in Kansas City, before we get to your tirades, there were tirades happening at Union Station. And this was a really bad look for the people involved. So credit to the Royals, credit to Crown Center. They had officials that came out last night and showed up and wanted to discuss with the folks, here are the plans for the new stadium. Here's the parking setup. Here's the ingress, egress. Here's how we're going to do all this when we hopefully build this new stadium come, 2031, give or take, right? And you had protesters who showed up and ended the meeting early. They forced the meeting to end early because they were protesting not getting their vote on the stadium. Now, I have been sympathetic to these people. They oftentimes lean left. But I've been very sympathetic and actually agree with them on the idea of put the stadium to a vote. I think if you're John Sherman, if you're Quinton Lucas, I think you benefit from putting it to a vote. And by the way, I also think that it will pass. I think it will pass for a couple of reasons. This Crown Center location is much better than the one at the Crossroads, much less controversial. I think the Chiefs deal helps Kansas City because that deal in Kansas is such an unmitigated disaster on so many levels, financially speaking. The Royals deal does not look nearly as bad. And there's also going to be an element of I just don't want to lose another team potentially to Kansas, even though I don't think Kansas is an option because, as I told you yesterday, the Chiefs deal is going to have to expand on the Star Bond District. The size and the scope of the Star Bond District is going to grow. So I see no way that Kansas could even afford to have two teams right now. But either way, I do think there's an element of it that people will just say, fine, keep the team here. We want to do what's in the best interest of Missouri, and they'll vote yes, right? I think that's coming. But at the same time, you've got to just sell it to the people. And I do think they could do it actually pretty effectively. I don't think it's a hard pitch. So I'm in favor of it going to a vote. But these people that are out there screaming and hooting and hollering and interrupting meetings like they're little kids, they're not doing themselves any favors whatsoever. They're not, John, and they should be embarrassed by what happened last night at Union Station.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
yeah.
Right?
Yes,
Voice
you're right.
your displeasure at City Hall.
Exactly. Go to 12th and Oak. Those are the people not giving you a vote, not the Royals and not the leadership at Crown Center. I mean, it's so bad, and it was such a horrible look on so many levels. Now it is time for your rants and your tirades. 913-408-7957. Phone lines are open. Tirade Tuesday is next on KCMO.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO.
It is 8:35 on a Tuesday morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. 95.7 FM in Kansas City, 102.9 FM in Topeka, and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. It's that time of the week. Let's do it.
It's time for Tirade Tuesday on 95.7 FM KCMO.
How dare you?
All right. 913-408-7957. The phone lines are open. John and Mark will hook you up, get you on the show right away. Tirade Tuesday is where you get to rant on whatever you want. It's the only 10 minutes of the week where I'm not controlling the content. I'm not controlling the direction of the show. You are. So it's only as good as you make it. Phones 913-408-7957. Let's start with Jim. He is in Lee's Summit. Jim, your tirade, let it rip.
Yeah, I'm calling about the, I consider morally bankrupt Jackson County Sheriff's Department. If you remember about 3 months ago, where it was on Channel 9 News, did a segment on it, and so did Fox 4 News about posting on the people's doors, notice to vacate, and you have 30 days to get out. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And so I'm one of those people. And they assigned it to a detective after I made a complaint. And he said he wasn't going to sweep it underneath the carpet. But I asked him how long it's going to be before you investigate this. And he says, well, I got 30 other cases. So I said, well, has it been 6 months, or it's going to be 6 months, going to be a year? And he hung up on me. And before that, he said, well, we got the guy who called in to get cover for the police deputies to come out and give this guy cover to post this. That's what threw me, was that I thought it was legitimate because the deputies that were there to give it some relevancy. And I come to find out that the taxpayers had to pay for them to come out. Anybody can call in and just say, oh, I want to post something. Will your deputy show up to give us protection? And so the deputy, I'll give the guy's name if you'll let me do it, the detective. And so now he won't return my calls. As I said, he hung up on me and just asking him. And these are all old people that received this. And this was really very traumatic for
So
people.
are you about to get kicked out of your house or your home? Is that what you're telling me?
I've never borrowed any money on a house. No, there's nothing. There's nothing there. He just posted these on, I know of 3 houses, and they're old people. But no, I don't owe any money.
So what are they telling you have to do, though?
They said they're going to investigate it. That's all I'm getting out of them. The last time I talked with this Detective Huff, he said that, well, we're not so sure that there's a crime here. And
but what is the crime they're? I don't understand. What's the crime they're alleging you of?
Not me. They posted it on my door. They're not alleging a crime of me. The guy that came by and posted this on different houses around Jackson County.
Yeah, alleging what?
Well, that they posted, this guy posted this with the aid of the sheriff's, 2 sheriff's deputies on my front door. It said, notice to vacate, you have 30 days to get out.
Okay, all right.
Scam.
Got it. All right, I got to get to other
scam.
people. I get it, Jim. Someone's got to email me about this because I'm like, who's on first, who's on second here? I'm not getting it. But if you're just saying that they posted a letter on your door and there's no reason for it, then yes, that's a problem. Just send me an email because I don't want to totally derail the segment. 913-408-7957. Tirade Tuesday on KCMO goes to Alex. Go. You're on KCMO.
Yo, Pete, my tirade is about concert giveaways. It sounds like somebody's giving away tickets to a band that was assembled in the clearance aisle of a music store. Meanwhile, you have an actual show that might be worth seeing, America's 250 event with Mundo and the gang. Can't we get some free tickets for that? That's the one people should be fighting over. We all know Mark and John wanted to see Luke Bryan, but the 95.7 listeners do not. Stop acting like a pair of free tickets automatically makes a mediocre concert exciting. And if you're going to hand something out, you want to make it worth what people actually want. And while we're talking about things that make no sense, can we discuss your commercials? Every other ad is about ED. We get it. You guys 37 and older have issues. There are enough slow-motion couples walking around crappy concerts in this town, and we don't need reminders. Can we mix it up a little? It'd be nice to hear commercials about curing blindness or a campaign for the guys who sit down to pee. Let's normalize that. It's quieter, it's cleaner, and nobody has to pretend they're a manly man for making life simple and clean. My point is, maybe we could spend a little less airtime telling everybody about miracle pills for that one problem and crappy concerts. A little more time talking about breakthroughs that help people see, walk, or make life easier for their wife. That seems like a much better use of 30 seconds than another beach stroll with soft piano music and a side effect that somehow attracts men to listening to 98 point whatever with that Dana girl. Hey, if any of this comes to fruition, John, I would love to win some tickets.
Unbelievable. Wow. That is quite a tirade. Thank you, Alex. Okay, here's what I'll say. Oh, my gosh. Where do I start? All right. We're not giving away America 250 tickets with Guy Benson, Vince Colanese, and McGraw-Milhaven, at least not right now because they're selling too quickly. The industry insight here is that typically ticket gives will go to hype up an event, or if an event may not be selling like the promoters want it to. That's a little inside baseball. Our America 250 event is almost 70% sold out, and there's still like 7 weeks to go until the event happens. These things have been selling very quickly at KCMOTalkRadio.com. So maybe we give away a couple at the end of the run right before the event in September, but I don't see that happening anytime soon because, honestly, they're selling very well. As for all your other complaints, well, listen. The people that want to buy airtime on this radio station are entitled and can buy airtime on this radio station. And if Alex has a small business and he wants to get involved, he can do it. 913-408-7957. Let's go to Lee Summit. That's where Billy is on a Tirade Tuesday. Go.
I just want to make a tirade about the fact that the Kansas City Star, since they started printing up in Des Moines, Iowa, cannot get their stuff printed on time, which makes us carriers late as can be, but yet they don't let the customers know that our 9 hours of routes starting at 1 a.m. is just going to be late. The weather's going to make us late. And we get complained at and get threatened to have things taken away from us because we can't get done on time, but they can't get it printed. We didn't even get the Wall Streets printed today because they couldn't get the press to work. But yet I'm still 3 hours late.
So you deliver.
Complain about it and also let the customers know that listen to you.
Well, that is great. I don't know how many people are left in this audience receiving a physical Kansas City Star, but if it keeps you employed, I am totally cool with that. So you're telling me, Billy, that you are delivering Kansas City Stars to people's front doors as late as what, like 10 o'clock in the morning?
The last 3 days, yeah, it's been 10, 11 o'clock in the morning before I get finished to head home.
Oh,
Normally,
my
I'm
gosh.
home by 9 a.m., but I've
Man.
got almost 400 miles a day to drive.
That is wild. Imagine getting a newspaper, and it's not your fault. Just imagine getting a newspaper at 11 o'clock in the morning. I mean, at that point, you just got to use it for the litter box for the cat.
Basically, and at this point, I think they're doing it on purpose because they want everybody to go digital. They want the old people to quit, and they refuse to quit. So we'll just start giving them crappy service and bad product.
And then people
think,
you're sleeping in, and they're yelling at you over it.
Correct.
That's
I get yelled at so much.
Hey, don't yell at Billy. He's just doing his job. Yell at the Kansas City Star. Call up their customer service, which I'm sure is based in some other country, and you'll talk to someone who can barely speak a lick of English. Sorry to hear that, Billy. Thanks for the call, though. Great tirade.
Thank you.
All right. John?
Well, I was going to say Billy probably speaks for several carriers who also hear from their customers, boomers like me who want the hard copy.
Yeah. Listen, I'll tell you what. I wouldn't pay for a Kansas City Star. I wouldn't do it. But I do enjoy holding a physical newspaper. I do.
I'm with you. I'm Mark Safe from the Kansas City Star on Facebook. So, but I do like magazines and things. I like to keep it for future reference.
Yeah, you're right. This is the time of year when I pick up the college football preview magazines, and I just love holding it and reading them and flipping the pages.
Quick
It's just
shout
something
out for
about
a
it.
freebie. Martin City Telegraph you can pick up around town. Has good stuff, especially about South Kansas City. So I pick that up whenever I can. Got a
Good
few
job.
in the newsroom there.
Good job. I like that. Happy to support anyone who's still printing newspapers, except for the Star. Oh, my gosh. I just can't do it. But, yeah, holding that physical newspaper, I've picked up the New York Post a little bit the last couple of days, flipped through some of the tabloids, the sports, the news, the Trump stuff, and there's just something nostalgic about it. Coming up, data centers in downtown Kansas City. Crispin Rea is a councilman who came out yesterday against the data center 20-story proposal on Central Street. Why and what does it mean for Kansas City? Coming up next on KCMO, and Philip Sarnicki will be here just after 9.
from Leawood to Liberty. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
So yesterday, a couple of Kansas City council members came out and said, yeah, this proposal for a data center right in the heart of downtown at 934 Central Street, yeah, we're out. We're against it. Crispin Rea, one of those council members, 4th District at large, joining us here on KCMO Talk Radio. Councilman, good morning. Thanks for your time. What made you ultimately decide that you were against the idea of this specific 20-story data center at 934 Central Street downtown?
Yeah, good morning, Pete. Thanks for having me. You know, there was a couple of factors that played into this. When I first learned about the project as a possibility rather than something that had been actually submitted to the city, I had reservations. Ultimately, the factors that played into this was, you know, one, historic preservation. They want to demolish a historic building that's on the National Register. And, you know, I think our historic architecture is worth preserving and fighting for. You know, second, we've worked very hard to build a thriving, vibrant downtown. We want businesses, we want employees down there buying lunch and residents spending money. And, you know, this would have been a project that would have contributed few employees to the overall area and no residents. And with how much we put into building downtown, it just didn't seem like the right fit. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was the news that came out last week that this might be part of some kind of tax credit scheme or something to that effect. And you know, when we review these projects, when we vet them, I think transparency and good faith with the city is important. And for myself, you know, I can't properly vet a project unless I know what's actually going to happen.
So is the project dead, or is there still a chance that it happens?
So this was just our statement of opposition. They still have to go to the City Plan Commission that's scheduled in August, and then that would advance to the City Council with a recommendation of basically a yes or a no to approve. And so, you know, the ball's kind of in their court. I reached out to the developer yesterday when we sent out the statement just to let them know that this was our position. And so as far as I know, they're still scheduled for the August CPC or City Plan Commission meeting.
Okay, so there still could be some movement on this. Why do we know why they even want downtown, in the sense that we've seen these data centers take up massive acreage in obviously more open land areas? Why a potential 20-story building in the heart of downtown?
Yeah, so, you know, they want to go vertical instead of horizontal. If you look at the reporting from last week, there is a theory that this is related to some kind of tax opportunity where you can apply for a tax credit that dollar value is the balance of the appraisal and the property value. And so under that idea, the higher the appraisal, the higher the tax credit. To enhance that appraisal value, the belief is that they propose something that would be very lucrative. And so I don't know, they haven't confirmed for me if that's what they're actually trying to do, but certainly some of their public statements have corroborated that.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and then lastly, if this deal does not go through, how much revenue to the city would you potentially be giving up, or is that also undetermined because it would depend on what the tax credits look like on a project like this?
Okay, so I don't think we know at this point. You know, the developer themselves have said to the news that they don't even know if it will be financially feasible, but they think this might be the most financially feasible project that could pencil out. And so I don't think they know how much revenue it would generate. And so, you know, I don't know that the city is really losing anything here. I think we're gaining an opportunity to re-engage with them and, you know, encourage them to build something that's going to house people and bring jobs downtown.
Yeah, it just seems like this, like you said earlier, is not really the way to do it. Is there something else that if you had your druthers here in the final 60 seconds, you'd like to see happen with some of these historic buildings that unfortunately have not developed in the way to create density in downtown KCMO?
Oh, yeah. I want to see them all flipped into housing, affordable housing, market rate housing, luxury housing. We need it at all levels. We are in a very inelastic housing market. We don't meet the demand with the supply, and that means everyone's prices go up, and it's just not affordable for so many folks. And downtown's the place to build that density. We've got the buildings; they've got good bones. These are historic buildings, and I want the city to be working with everyone who owns those buildings to get people living in them.
Yeah, well, Crispin, thanks for joining the show here. Appreciate what you had to say yesterday, and we'll talk to you again soon. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, appreciate you. Thanks.
All right, Crispin Rea, Kansas City Councilman, 4th District at large on KCMO on the data center proposal for basically 10th and Central Street is where they want to potentially put this thing up. We got a week to go until the primaries. Philip Sarnicki wants to be the next governor of Kansas, and we'll talk to him about the data centers. He has proposed a moratorium in the state against data centers. What does that look like? How would you implement it? Philip Sarnicki joins us next. Can you believe it? 1 week from today is Election Day on both sides of our state line. But, of course, when it comes to statewide elections, all eyes have been on Kansas and the governor's race, especially this GOP primary. Philip Sarnicki wants to be the next guy to run the state of Kansas. He's got executive experience, and he's joining us right now on KCMO Talk Radio. Philip, you are heading down the home stretch of this campaign. What are you hearing on the ground from Kansans as you crisscross the state in the final days?
Hey, Pete. Good morning. Thanks for having me. What I am hearing, great question. People are sick and tired of career politicians. They're sick and tired of a lack of results. You know, Ty Masterson and the leaders promising property tax relief for 3 straight years and delivering nothing unless you're a foreign company, professional sports team, wind turbine, green energy, then you get property tax relief. Property taxes are crushing people across the state of Kansas. I got back from Hayesville last night after midnight. We had a big fundraiser and rally. We were down in Wichita yesterday. We're off to Abilene today. And we have an amazing grassroots energy that's going on across the state because people understand whether income tax, property tax, lack of economic growth, how we're crushing people with our bureaucracy, crushing our businesses in the state of Kansas, that we need change. Kansas is a turnaround operation. And I'm sorry, when you have a turnaround, you don't promote people from within who have been there for over 2 decades to get the results and get the job done. So we love the energy that's going on. Last week, our volunteers made over 8,000 phone calls just last week. Last night, while I was in Hayesville, our volunteers made over 2,000 phone calls. And I could tell you, I think you could take every other campaign combined, Pete, from the beginning, and I don't think they've had volunteers make 10,000 phone calls, and we've done that. Our volunteers have done that in the last week. So it's been pretty awesome. It's really energizing. It's been a lot of fun. So we're gonna leave it all on the field here. We're under the 2-minute warning, and we're gonna sprint through the finish line.
All right, there you go. So, Philip, listen, you have not shied away. In fact, you have a new ad acknowledging that President Trump has endorsed one of your opponents. That is Ty Masterson, who I see is going to be doing a tele-rally for Senator Masterson coming up tomorrow. Why is this something that doesn't seem to, I don't know if concern you is the wrong word. Obviously, you would have liked it, but why is it something that you're almost not running away from and just saying, listen, the president did endorse somebody else, but it doesn't seem to really have a big impact on how you're running your campaign? Why is that? What's the strategy behind it? And what has that reaction been like from Kansans?
Well, yeah, good question. I've never run for office before, as you know. This is new. I sold 3 of my companies to do this because I just felt we didn't have anybody with the executive level skill set to really run this state. 40,000 state employees, $26 billion annual budget, and I'm running against people who have never successfully run a small business in their lives, and it didn't make sense for me, for people like that to be running the state. But on the Trump issue, listen, when the Trump endorsement came out, I asked my team, who's won 18 governor's races, guys, what kind of issue is this? How big of an issue is this? And they said, well, if it was a Senate or congressional race, it would be a much bigger issue than a gubernatorial race. They said a gubernatorial race, it's not that big of a deal because the issues are so state specific. And literally after they told me that, 6 days later, Zach Lane up in Iowa, the outside business guy, never run for office, Maha endorsed, just like me, beat the Trump-endorsed career politician. And I said, well, geez, I guess you guys were right. And then about a week and a half after that, Rick Jackson in the gubernatorial primary in Georgia beat the outside business guy, Rick Jackson, who's never run for office, beat the Trump-endorsed career politician in Georgia. Oklahoma, same thing. So we have a mirror image of those states going on in Kansas right now. You have Ty Masterson, who is the living manifestation of a career politician. He has been there for almost a quarter of a century, leading the Republican Party in the state of Kansas, as Senate president for the last, 6 or 7 years, and an outside business leader, job creator, never run for office, doesn't need the job, wants to go for 8 years, and I want to go home after, running the state for 8 years. And Pete, let's be clear, this is a two-person race. I know that, Ty knows that. I don't know if the other candidates know that, but it's very clearly a two-person race. Ty took out a $500,000 ad buy against me last Monday. It was an attack ad. Quite frankly, it's a disgusting ad. It's wall-to-wall lies. But my point is this: you don't spend $500,000 attacking someone with 2 weeks to go if you're not very worried and very concerned. And then the Trump thing that you talked about, the tele thing that I heard about, it's the same thing. I mean, they are concerned. They are worried. Ty's negatives with this no-show job at Go Create that, by the way, we're pretty sure he is part of that is taxpayer funded. He's violating, in-kind contributions and in-kind contribution limits with that. It's, we got some weird answer from Wichita State about what it is. And the people down there don't know who the guy is. I mean, he's been there for 10 years, and the press goes out and interviews people that work there, and they're like, yeah, I don't know who that is. Never seen the guy. So it's just this whole culture of, quite frankly, and it's not everybody in Topeka by any means. We have wonderful, wonderful legislators in Topeka, and I have a lot of them that are, endorsing me either publicly or privately, but he is, and some of the leaders there are enriching themselves off the taxpayers, whether it's luxury suites at the new Chief Stadium, brand new private jets, or whether it's, jobs that you don't have to show up to and you make $200,000 a year, so you have a quid pro quo with Wichita State University. And I just find that all appalling when we've run deficits now for almost the entire fiscal year of 2025, and our budget has blown up in the last 7 years from, $16 billion to now $26 billion with Republicans in charge of the state House and state Senate. So it is time to clean house. It's time to get rid of the career politicians. We need to do what, quite frankly, President Trump did at the federal level and what so many other states have done with their governors. And we need to elect an outsider and a business leader who can win this election, and we can win this election next Tuesday.
Last thing for you, Philip Sarnicki is joining us on KCMO Talk Radio, running for governor of Kansas. Primary, of course, is next Tuesday. Data centers getting a lot of attention, as you know, across the state here in the Kansas City area. A big story about a proposal in KCMO that we've talked a lot about today. I believe you have pushed for a moratorium on these things in Kansas. How do you balance this? Because it does seem like it's something that is getting overlooked by Republican leadership and the establishment out of Washington, D.C. They seem to think everybody wants these things. There's a big push on the local level to try to stop these things in some more rural communities. So where do you see the future of data centers in Kansas, knowing full well technology is good, but there still are a lot of unanswered questions as to how these data centers impact their local communities?
Well, I was sitting in a meeting with actually a friend of mine, big supporter of mine. He's a tech expert. He's already had 2 very successful exits with companies he founded, and he consults to the Googles of the world on AI, technology, et cetera. And we were talking about this, and Pete, we were sitting in a room that, I don't know, I'm guessing was 10 by 20, and he looked at me and he said, Philip, in 10 years, a data center will fit in this room. And you think about these hyperscale data centers for AI, which obviously is very different than, we've had data centers for 40 years. You don't have a cell phone or an app without a data center. We're talking about hyperscale data centers for AI. And the light bulb just went off, and I said, well, if the technology is moving that quickly, and he talked about, think about an IBM mainframe all the way to your cell phone, but just condense the speed with which that technology is happening. I said, can we put something in place, say, for the next 5 years Not that a community can't have a data center. If a local community wants a data center and they want, whatever they think's coming from that, the jobs, bonuses to teachers, increased property tax revenue, and they can negotiate a good deal, and that community wants it, then God bless them. They should have that. The people in Johnson County shouldn't be telling the people in Lincoln, Kansas, 6 hours away if they should have a data center or not. So we just said, hey, let's put some protections in for the local community where they're not going to get run over. There's no undue burden on the water. They use their own energy. Electricity rates won't go up. No eminent domain by private companies. And then let the community vote on it, which there's legislation from 2007 that's how we do casinos in Kansas. So if a community wants a casino, you can vote on it. So we just said, let's do that for 5 years while this technology is changing so rapidly. And then, we can you can reset as technology changes throughout that period of time. But we really wanted to make sure that the communities had a say and they weren't getting run over. That's really all it is.
Philip Sarnicki, best of luck on the campaign trail the next few days. Philip, we will talk to you again soon. Have a great rest of the week.
Hey, Pete, thanks for having me, man.
You bet. Philip Sarnicki on KCMO Talk Radio. Very interesting. He's right. It's a two-man race. It's Ty. It's Philip. That's it. It's just the reality. Coming up next, Dave Trabert of the Kansas Policy Institute will join us on the enrollment changes across Kansas, including some of the key districts here in the Kansas City area. It's not pretty at all, and he will share what it means next on KCMO. All right, so you're sitting there right now, and you're thinking to yourself, boy, I'm having a gathering this weekend, maybe finally cooling off around Kansas City a little bit, at least for the next few days. But you've got maybe some sinking concrete, driveway, walkway, the patio. Don't think you have to jump to spending a fortune on this, because KC Pier has a polyjacking service that's affordable, and it will allow your concrete to get a lot more life out of it before you got to replace the patio, the driveway, the walkway. Reach out to KC Pier, where when you call them, a local person in Kansas City picks up the phone. Not some call center in some other country, not some robot. A real person in Kansas City picks up the phone because they're locally owned and locally operated right here in Kansas City, and they'll give you a free consultation to get a feel for what exactly is going on with your concrete and if they can fix it with their polyjacking service, which they typically can. It's like mudjacking, but it's much more technologically savvy, lasts a lot longer, and is great for Kansas City where we have that heavy clay soil. Go to kcpier.com, that's kcpier.com, and schedule that consultation today.
from Gladstone to Gardner. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
KansasPolicy.org is where you can read this piece from Dave Trabert about the public school enrollment changes over the last several years in the state of Kansas, which has been happening statewide. It has been happening in some of the key school districts here in the Kansas City area. Dave, good morning. Great to have you on the show. What is the biggest thing to take away from some of the enrollment changes and declines you're seeing across the state?
Well, good morning, Pete. It's good to be here. I'd say the number one thing is parents are sending a very clear message to school districts. They want to have a say. They want to have the final say, actually, in how their kids are educated. And what they've been finding since 2019 is that a lot of kids just aren't learning as much as they thought. And instead, they're being indoctrinated with a wide range of diversity, equity, inclusion, gender, even hiding things from parents. And it's really noticeable here because 22 counties added students, but none of them were in the major population centers.
I see here that Johnson County has seen a decrease of students from 2019 to 2026 of 3%. The staff over that period of time has grown 8.4%. That's just, to me, it's inexcusable. It really is inexcusable, Dave. How would you even justify that?
It happens. You can't justify it, of course. It happens because, and this is not unique to school districts. You can find the same thing with cities and counties. Staff drives everything. Staff wants more staff. School board members in most cases, just go along with staff proposals. They don't ask very simple questions. How will adding these non-teacher positions improve student outcomes? And the answer is it won't. It's just what the staff wants to do. When you have outcomes, even in Blue Valley, the outcomes are nowhere near what the community expects. In most cases, communities are looking for at least 75% of their kids being proficient. It's barely half in Blue Valley and a lot worse in many other parts of the state. So every district has a lot of work to do, and they're not going to get there by doing the same things that brought them to the position they are at today.
Is there anything, Dave, that can be done on a state level as we see the staff increases far exceed what we're seeing on the enrollment front, or is this just going to be handled and have to be handled at a local level?
No, it has to be handled at the state level, in my opinion, because the local levels, generally speaking, not in every case, but the local levels have demonstrated that they will not do it. They won't even follow state laws. Like you get $500 million statewide to provide above and beyond services for kids who are academically at risk. State audits show the school districts aren't doing it, and the State Department of Education won't make them do it. So this is never going to get resolved without legislative intervention. And the way to do it is simply to hold districts accountable. If they said you must identify what your goals are, very specific, we're going to go from point A to point B in this length of time, and then you monitor progress toward it. And if you're not making progress, or if you're falling behind, then you lose accreditation. And that is what will get the attention. That will tell school boards they need to reallocate resources to improve outcomes. Right now, there is no requirement. There is zero accountability on public schools in Kansas.
That's, wow, that's unbelievable. All right, Dave, so as people are thinking about the polls next week, this November, what should they be thinking about as it relates to this specific study? People can read it at kansaspolicy.org, and how things need to change as it relates to our discussions around the public school system and the budgeting around it.
You want to ask candidates for governor and state legislature and the state school board, there's 5 around the state, you want to ask, will you vote to hold school districts accountable, as in losing their accreditation if they don't show adequate improvement in academic performance? It's a real simple question, yes or no. We've tried with the legislature. We're making some progress, but the Democrats and an awful lot of the Republicans don't want to vote on it. They do not, because they're more concerned about how the school districts might react to being held accountable. That might get them voted out of office. That's the number one priority, fortunately, for a lot of people in public office.
Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute, always doing great work here on KCMO. Read the story at kansaspolicy.org. Dave, keep up the great work. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much for the time.
Thanks, Pete. Have a good week.
All right, you as well. Always great to have him on the show. Coming up next, our caller of the day, fired up about the data center controversy and issue next.
The fun's not done after Mundo in the Morning. Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Join me for Uncanceled at 10 o'clock right here on KCMO Talk Radio.
It is going to be a great Uncanceled. 10 o'clock, 25 minutes. Cannot wait. Don't miss it on KCMO Talk Radio. Keatsman made a lot of noise yesterday on X as, of course, the world is reacting to the tragedy out of Northern Virginia where Eric Bieniemy's wife was shot allegedly by their own son Sunday night in Virginia. What does that mean for the Chiefs? How will this play out? What's the impact on the upcoming season? I know Keats will have more on that coming up on KCMO. All right, our caller of the day tied to the data center issue, which was back in the news this morning because yesterday, two Kansas City councilmen, Eric Bunch and Crispin Rea, came out with a joint statement saying, yeah, this proposal at like 10th and Central for a 20-story data center, knocking down a historical building, which, listen, whether or not you care about historical buildings is up to you. I'm just kind of adding color to the story. But knocking that down, putting up a 20-story data center is not something we want to do. I agree with them on that. I mean, I've had plenty of critiques of how Kansas City has obviously gone about its business policy-wise. They have not done a good job creating a downtown that can maximize vibrancy and maximize density. But if you put the data center down there, you're basically just giving up on the whole vision for downtown, which is population density, which then leads to a vibrant economic climate. It's not even an anti-data center thing. It's just the wrong location for a data center in terms of actually trying to have some kind of vision and plan for what downtown Kansas City is ideally supposed to look like. So they come out yesterday with the statement saying we're out, and this is something that I think is like the stadium issue, not cutting along party lines. The President of the United States has been very much pro-data center, but he was getting heckled by his own supporters yesterday in Michigan, which I'll get to here coming up. But first, let's play our caller of the day.
Hello? It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
Steve's in KCK on KCMO. What's up, Steve?
Morning, Pete. Hey, one of my biggest concerns is the use of eminent domain, and there's people losing their land in red states like Alabama. They're losing their land to some of these data centers. And I don't care who the president is, Republican or Democrat. That's not cool. And this also is a big concern with me. And in my opinion, I think Ty Masterson could be what Trump wants. I'd like to hear some promises out of Ty Masterson that there's going to be no eminent domain being used to take Kansas land from Kansas property owners. Yeah, he seems to be pretty proud of those Chiefs deal, and that's a good thing. I could see Ty Masterson being that guy. It's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I don't think the Trump endorsement of Masterson was that, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way to either guy. I don't think it was all that deeply thought out in the sense that I just believe the right people were in charge of the campaign who had the right connections, and there was a case to be made that ties the best guy in a general to help Roger Marshall, win re-election. I think it was more about the X's and O's of politics than it was any policy per se, but I understand what you're saying there. I'll have Philip Sarnicki on at 9:05 this morning. Do you know who you're voting for yet, Steve?
Right now I'm with Sarnicki. Ty Masterson just kind of has that Mitt Romney greasy hair car dealer salesman vibe to me. He rubs me the wrong way.
Okay. Steve in KCK, our caller of the day on a Tuesday morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. There you have it. So now you look at where this data center conversation is going to go. And the President of the United States is rarely out of touch with his grassroots. But on this data center, he is. Here is the President of the United States and what he said just a few days ago about the data centers and what he believes to be great opportunities for local communities around the country.
And even communities compared to other communities. You have some communities that really want this. This isn't all negative stuff. You have communities that really want the data centers. And frankly, those are the smart communities because it means tremendous numbers of jobs, very little actual disruption. And the ones that don't want it, the happiest people in the world are foreign countries, number one, and number two, other communities within our country because they're begging for them to be there. And some of them are great communities, very, very forward-looking communities, very smart communities.
I don't know anyone begging for them. Do you? And we've had a ton of controversy from Spring Hill, Edgerton, DeSoto. Go to up north, Liberty, go to Independence, Casey Mo. I don't know anyone who's begging for them.
Rather have a Casey's, Pete.
Give me a second Buc-ee's, okay?
Yeah, something, right?
After they finish KCK. Yeah, I'll eat all the Buc-ee's pizza.
Buc-ee's, those things are big enough. What can we do there on the upper level?
Yeah.
Buc-ee's data center.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I mean, I don't know anyone begging for them. Now, there might be people who say, hey, the pros outweigh the cons, and if you're not giving away the farm when it comes to tax credits, then yeah, there can be a potential windfall of revenue, can be potentially. But the president's even talking about, a ton of jobs. The biggest critique is that there are not really a lot of permanent jobs affiliated with these centers. There's a handful of guys walking around making sure everything's running on time and operating right. But the construction jobs are great, but they're obviously temporary gigs. So the president feels to me like on this issue, he firmly believes we're in a race with China on the AI front. He's right about that. But let's also acknowledge where we are in the AI race. We have now 5,000 data centers in this country. China has fewer than 500. It's not close. It's
What's
not like
here. It's like 24 or something. See, before we even knew anything about them, we've already got a couple dozen around town.
Yes. And I think it might be like 30 in KCMO alone.
Mm-hmm.
Because as Sarnicki said, I mean, these data centers aren't new. We've had them for decades. They're just obviously now rapidly growing because of the AI push and how big that is in our economy and day-to-day lives. So from that standpoint, it's like, okay, I'm not against them. But to sit here and say everyone's begging for them, I mean, we had this conversation all the time in both of our states, and I don't know anyone who's begging for them. It's just, hey, what are the pros versus the cons, and let's make sure there's something in it for the taxpayer, and let's make sure that there is actual value for the community involved in these projects. That's what it really is about. And to have the blanket statement, that's just not true. So yesterday in Michigan, Trump's up there doing a speech with manufacturing organizations, and there were, a few dozen people, give or take, who are out there trying to make their voices heard as it relates to being against data centers. This is what it sounded like. All right, so that was what it sounded like yesterday in Michigan, where the president was doing a rally. It's not going to be the deciding midterm factor because a lot of this stuff is local, right? A lot of this is handled at the state, county, and city levels. But we're also, I think, Republican leadership needs to be careful, is realizing that the data center issue is one that has deep ties to a lot of the things that Republicans have really tried to protect over many, many years. Things like property rights, protecting rural communities, skepticism around government subsidies, local control, how many thousands of acres of farmland would potentially disappear. What does that mean for our national security? Massive electrical demand reshaping our grid, millions of gallons of water devoted to cooling, relatively few permanent jobs once construction ends. Like these are not unreasonable conversations to have. And just saying blanketly everyone's begging for these things, that's just not true. It's not. And the nuance around it is what really matters. Like even in KCMO, I think, could go all in on data centers in the right locations. Kansas City has 320 square miles, the same square mileage as New York City, with 1/16th the amount of people, 500,000 versus 8 million. Kansas City needs every dollar it can get its hands on. They just can't maximize their square mileage because of how spread out the city is. So find places to put data centers that are strategic in places where you're not making a lot of money, or any money for that matter. But don't put it downtown at 20 or 10th and Central, where in the right scenario, you can actually build up downtown in a way that creates density and drives what you want a downtown to be, which is robust, a lot of people, restaurants, entertainment, all those different things. Just be smart about where you're putting them. That's got to be part of the messaging here as well, and that's really falling on the local municipalities. 913-408-7957. That is the text line. That is the studio line on KCMO Talk Radio as we take you up until 10 o'clock when Kevin Keatsman Uncanceled takes over. On the text line, Pete, why don't the Bill Gateses and Mark Zuckerbergs of the world put all these data centers on their own property if these things are of such value? Ooh, that's a good one. Hadn't thought about that. I'll have to give that some more thought. Something I'm curious on, though, tomorrow, Ty Masterson is having a teletown hall with the President of the United States. Listen, if you're Ty Masterson, you hug that Trump endorsement and you squeeze it for every last drop over the next week. But I'm genuinely curious, who goes to a tele-rally? Honestly, who goes to a tele-rally?
Jeffrey Toobin. Business casual attire, of course.
Pants, please. Oh, we'll get to it next on KCMO.
Vince Colonnese here. Join me for your lunch hour from 11 to 2 on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
I don't get it. It's not a knock on the president or Masterson. Masterson's doing the right thing. If Trump says, hey, I'll do a tele-rally for you tomorrow, which is what's going to happen at 5:30, you do it. You jump on it. Kansas voters will receive a phone call inviting them to join this tele-rally, and you can join the Ty Masterson-Donald Trump tele-rally tomorrow at 5:30 by calling 833-746-0072. I'll put her on social media so you don't have to write that down. I'm just curious. I love Trump. He's hysterical. But a tele-rally? I mean, I guess if you're working from home, as someone says here on the text line, hey, Pete, as long as it doesn't interfere with a Teams or Zoom meeting, I guess those people can go. That's a good point. Or, shut-ins, people that are maybe older and obviously in the home more frequently. But I don't know. Unless Trump's doing a, stand-up routine, I'm not sure that I'm really going to learn a lot on a tele-rally.
I'm going to work mine in. I've got a dinner scheduled, steak dinner for a timeshare thing, so I'm working in between that presentation and that kind of stuff. I'm having that kind of fun today.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, no, that's such a good point. It's just one of those things. Like part of the allure of a Trump rally is being there in person, right? It's being around the thousands of screaming fans. It's like being at a big sporting event. That's what it's like being at a Trump rally. I mean, I've been to one in Topeka when he was here. Probably the last time he was here for any kind of political event was for Chris Kobach and Steve Watkins. There's a throwback name for you. John probably remembers. That was before you, Mark. But Steve Watkins was in Congress for a hot minute in 2018. He got blown out in 2020 by Jake LaTurner. And there was a big rally for Kobach and Watkins in 2018, and I was there. And it's the only Trump rally I've been to. And I was there as a member of the media, but you can still just feel the energy in the room. There's nothing like it. For me, I would compare it to being at a big Chiefs game, being at a Springsteen concert, where these guys, it's about the show. It's not even necessarily about what is said or the music or the game. It's about the show, John.
Yeah, you can listen to the live album, but being there is different.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy in terms of, a Trump rally and what it really is all about. It's not about what he says. You've seen one, you've seen them all in terms of the script. It's about what you get by being there. So I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting tomorrow. I'll do my best to call in and see what it's all about. I'm just curious, who that diehard tele-rally audience is. But it makes all the sense in the world for Masterson. If that's all you can get out of Trump, then you do it, okay? That's how it works. And with that, we are putting a bow on this show here on KCMO Talk Radio on what has been a very busy Tuesday morning, a week to go until, of course, primary day in Kansas and Missouri. The amendments, obviously, on both sides of the state line getting a lot of attention and soaking up a lot of dollars as well. Whether it is Missouri eliminating the income tax, if you missed that conversation this morning, you can listen to it on the podcast. Bishop Davidson is the guy who sponsored that bill on the House side of Missouri. He joined us at 8 o'clock, so that'll be up on the podcast after the show wraps up this morning. Philip Sarnicki was here earlier this hour, wants to be the next governor of Kansas. We'll try to get Masterson on the show tomorrow since he does have that tele-rally happening tomorrow night. And Karen Crnkovich wants to be the next Johnson County chairperson. She was on early at 7 o'clock. So all those interviews will be up on the podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Pete Mundo, search KCMO Talk Radio, and subscribe to it there. Kevin Keatsman Uncanceled is next, and damn, it's going to be an all-timer. Do not miss it right after the top of the hour news on KCMO. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.